Okay, so management. What do we say about management? Well, management is all about the people side. And while most businesses, most startup businesses, especially the types of startups that you and I might tend to start, might be 0 or 1 employee, might be us and a spouse or a friend or whoever we can wrangle up to be help. As you grow, you're going to need to hire people. And you're going to need to self-manage too, really. And so even though management probably isn't as big a consideration in this course as, say, well, it's definitely is not a big consideration as marketing or finance and accounting, it's definitely something that you need to think about. Because I can tell you, even in my little small business, that's me and my husband, I manage folks on a regular basis who provide services for me. And I definitely need to use those management skills sometimes. And so even though you think my business is just me and whomever, you can also use these tools to manage self, to manage contractors, to manage the folks that you're doing business with, and to some extent managing your customers. So this is management. Okay, so let's talk about management of the entrepreneurial venture, or how we manage small businesses. And management is really about using your human, your technological, financial, and other resources to create and sustain a competitive advantage. The functional roles of the manager involve planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. And I'm going to talk about each of those roles later on in the lecture. But first, I want to talk about the management process, or the managerial process. What managers do is really, their job is one of anticipation, thinking about what you want to happen, thinking about what could happen, thinking about what you don't want to happen. And so what you're doing is you're anticipating potential problems and then developing plans to deal with those problems. You're coordinating and allocating resources to implement your plan. You are guiding people through that implementation process, and then you're reviewing results and making changes. Now, I know that it's kind of deficit thinking to think about, well, what problems are going to trip me up? And I would agree with you. However, when you're thinking about managing a small business, you have to be thinking from a competitive mindset. And when I'm thinking from a competitive mindset, it's not only my competitors, but it's how is the city of Oceanside competing with me? How is my insurance company competing with me? What kind of problems can I anticipate in the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months? And how am I going to deal with those? And our goal ultimately is to be a more efficient and effective entrepreneur, or to have a more efficient and effective entrepreneurial venture. So getting into those management activities, we'll start with planning. Planning is really about setting objectives and stating the mission of the organization, and then living out that mission. So you're examining alternatives, you're identifying what resources you might need and how to launch those resources or implement those resources. And then you're creating strategies to meet your company objectives. Leading, that's really about leading and motivating employees to meet the organizational goals. That's about communication, that's about solving problems, and that's about managing change. Probably the most important thing that we do as humans is manage change. Organizing is about creating order. So that's really designing jobs and specifying tasks for folks, creating an organizational structure, staffing positions, coordinating work activities, setting policies, allocating resources, and not only setting policies, but creating procedures to carry out those policies. And then controlling is really about keeping everyone, including you, on task. Measuring performance, comparing performance to set standards, and then taking steps to improve your personal and organizational performance. What can you do better? So looking at planning. Planning is both short and long term.
And so there's 4 types of planning when we go from long-term to short-term, or short-term to long-term, I think in terms of long-term first. Your strategic planning is long-term and broad. If you recall, we did a lecture and some activities on strategic planning. Strategic planning is probably one of the most important things that you can do as a person, as a business owner, and as a business. Strategic planning is long-term and broad. It's driven by your mission and purpose, where you want to be. It tends to be a longer time horizon, 1 to 5 years, okay? And then tactical planning is more specific. And that tactical planning implements your strategic plans. So those are really the action items that you're going to carry out in order to make that strategic plan happen. And so tactical is generally 1 year or less. Operational planning is your current and specific, your day-to-day planning. Setting standards, methods, policies, procedures, all of the little things that you have to do in the functional areas of your business to keep it going. And then contingency planning is the planning that you have to do that is event-based or situationally based. Sometimes the crisis, sometimes the response to something that a competitor does. And so that's all of your contingency planning. Organizing is really about coordinating and allocating resources. Organizing in the small business is really about dividing up tasks that need to be completed, grouping jobs and employees to complete those tasks, and then assigning authority and responsibility to make sure that those tasks get done. Leading is about guiding and motivating other people toward achievement of organizational goals. And there's a typo there. It should say others, toward achievement of motivational goals. And leaders use power to influence behavior. And there's really 5 types of power that I'm going to talk about. Legitimate power, which is power that is based on your role. Reward power is really about what you can give. Coercive power is your punishment power. And expert power is based on your specific or expert knowledge. And then referential power is based on the charisma that one might have, or the extent to which folks, for lack of a better word, like and admire you. Well, I guess you can like somebody but not admire them. So admiration, let's just go with admiration. When we look at leadership styles, leaders can be autocratic. That's your general dictatorial, you do it because I said so, kind of the paramilitary kind of structure. Typically like police organizations, military organizations, they tend to have autocratic rulers or autocratic leaders. Participative leadership, democratic leadership, everybody gets a vote. That's how democratic leaders work. Leaders who work on consent. Basically, I'm going to ask my employees what they think. We're all going to come to consensus. And when we come to consensus, that's what we're going to do. And then leaders who consult. And consult basically means this. I'm going to take your feedback and I'm going to listen to you in my decision-making process, but ultimately it's up to me to make the decision because I'm the one that bears the burden of responsibility. And so while I'll hear you, ultimately I have to be the person that makes the decision. And then laissez-faire is kind of the anything goes, do what you want kind of leadership, letting everybody kind of self-manage, for lack of a better word. The leader who really doesn't want to lead but wants to let everybody do their own thing. Moving on to the controlling aspect of management. Controlling is about setting goals. So setting the goals that you might have for your business. They could be sales goals, they could be growth goals, they could be product line goals, whatever goals that you might have. So setting the goals, measuring your performance toward achieving those goals, comparing your actual performance to whatever set standard you're measuring against. And then if you're not meeting that standard, taking corrective action and then setting up future goals. So that really is an iterative process. I really should have. I've got some great visuals in my handwritten notes for these slides. I don't know how to transfer my handwritten notes into beautiful Google slides. I'll figure that out at some point. Decision-making. 3 decision-making roles. Informational decision-making is about disseminating information, or acting as a spokesperson or a monitor. Interpersonal decision-making is acting as the figurehead, the leader, or the liaison. And then decisional roles, roles that the entrepreneur makes about the business, handling disturbances, allocating resources, and acting in a negotiation or a negotiator capacity. Ultimately, what good managers need is human resource skills, conceptual skills, and technical skills. And as a small business owner, you probably don't have to leverage all of those right away because you might be human resources of you, but you still have to self-manage your time. You still have to make decisions as the small business owner. You still have to plan, set goals, measure your progress. So all of these things that are human-based, conceptual, and technical. You also need to do a good job. If you own a pizza shop, you still got to know how to make good pizza. But all of these roles that we see in large organizations, we still need in small businesses. And so while this lecture really focuses on the act of management, my challenge to each of you as you think about your individual businesses is how you're going to manage them to grow them to whatever scale you ultimately want them to be. And so that is what I have for management.